Hello, everyone. This is Kristina Mandlakiani, co-founder of Mindvalley and the host of Mindvalley Book Club. And welcome to my weekly interviews. I have my guest here who I'm going to introduce, but I think you can see already my guest. It's Jayne Mattingly. Hi, Jayne.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
We're going to be talking about this book. This is Body Grief. So Jayne Mattingly has a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling and also has a professional background in eating disorder recovery. She loves crystals. Uh, as you talk about yourself, Jayne, in your bio, you're a crystal loving disabled baddie
I am.
and on a mission. And we are going to talk about, she's also the author of this wonderful new book, This is Body Grief, which, by the way, I already managed to recommend while I was in LA at Mindvalley
Oh,
Manifesting Summit.
thank you so much. That means the world. Oh my goodness.
Thank you so much, Jayne, for joining us. And maybe I left out something out of this brief official bio that you
Oh
would
my
like to
gosh.
add because it's important.
Thank you so much. Yes, I mean, what a beautiful intro. Yeah, I have my master's in clinical mental health counseling. I am newly disabled in the last 7 years. I'm 34 and I'm a Chicagoland native. I live in Charleston, South Carolina now with my service dog and my husband and my little dog and cat. And I really turned my problem into my purpose, which might be the capitalist inside of me, and I talk about that a lot in my book. But without that, I probably wouldn't be where I am. And body grief is really making peace with the loss that comes with your body. And when people ask themselves, like, why is my body against me, or I feel like my body has betrayed me, or I'm grieving the loss of bodily autonomy, that is body grief, and we really haven't had these words to describe it. And so I studied it professionally and personally, and it really is just dissecting the systems of oppression that are against us and within us. And yeah, I am just incredibly passionate about it. It's a forever healing journey, and I love to talk about it. I live it, and it's just a constant process.
Thank you for this self introduction. It's really, I think it's really. It really reveals the passion in what you're doing, and that's what you can feel throughout the book. So for those of you, we did mention the book and we recommended you to download it and to read it. It was on Friday when we sent out the email and the video, so I hope you had a chance. If you haven't had a chance, the book This Body Grief actually takes you through 7-step process of moving from body grief to body trust.
Mhm.
And we're going to dive deeper and discuss the concepts in this interview. However, I want to say that this book is very much based in, well, mental health counseling, obviously, because you can feel it's literally like having a psychotherapy session throughout the book. It is very practical. It has a lot of exercises, points for reflection. So I believe you could read this book slowly with your journal, do the exercises, and actually do this work rather than just rush through the book.
Yes.
So, well, as usual, since we pick very few books for these interviews, and this is the book of the week by Mindvalley Book Club, of course, it comes with my warm recommendation.
Oh,
So now to the interview, I'll start probably with a very obvious question, although I'm very tempted to ask you about your personal story, but maybe we'll leave it for a little later.
okay.
I want you to explain what is body grief, and it will be two questions in one, and who could be feeling body grief?
Ooh, love it. Okay. So body grief is really it's universal. Okay. We all feel it. And it really is here's how I want to answer it. It is that feeling of, oh my goodness, my body is changing and I feel like it is betraying me. I am grieving the loss that my body was once something that I felt I was entitled to. My core self inside has not changed, but my physical self has. And so that could be from puberty to aging, from chronic illness to gender dysphoria, from racial inequity to injury, from menopause to pregnancy loss. It is when our bodies feel as if they are betraying us through change or loss, and we are not ready for it. We feel we are not entitled to that. Or it's like, why is this happening? We have tried so hard to heal. And it's like again and again and again, our bodies continue to fail us.
Mm,
But when it comes down to it, our bodies are meant to age, our bodies are meant to change. And for some reason, wellness culture and capitalist culture has taught us, and diet culture has taught us that we can micromanage our biology. And we feel that we have the right to control all of that.
mm,
And that has created this culture of body consciousness, and really like a culture that is really inept in grief. Like we don't have um, this, we have a grief illiterate society. And so when we then start to tap into our mind body awareness, which is how we heal our body grief, we then become less of a soldier to this culture that tells us to work, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle. And we start to heal ourselves. And so, again, the person that this book is made for is literally anybody in a body.
mm,
And even more so, those who are more marginalized. So I think the people that really like heavily identify with this are the ones that have been dismissed,
mm,
the ones who have been ignored. I know people that have reached out so much are the ones that have been like, oh my goodness, people that didn't believe me at first, or people that just thought I was invisible.
mm.
The aging population, the chronically ill population, the disabled population. Um, so really it's making peace with the loss that comes with living in a body.
So pretty much anyone can feel body grief.
Yes, anyone.
Although this book is mostly like a therapy session, as I said, but it does have a
Mm.
very strong component of, well, our social, societal ills, if I can say so. You know
Yes.
what causes the body grief. So, as I was reading, I do not know if it was somewhere in your book or it just coincided. So, I had a feeling that very often when people attach their value to how good they look, how able they are, how beautiful they are,
Mhm.
the body grief can hit them harder than
Yeah.
those who maybe from the start never put this much value on that. And what made me think about that? We had this event in LA over the weekend, and we had Gwyneth Paltrow visited,
Mm.
and she's a beautiful woman now in her 50s. And Vishen asked her. Vishen is the founder of Mindvalley. That's for Jane. He
Yeah.
asked her what is her next big project. And I
Mm.
was really shocked, and it reminded me of your book, which was such a wonderful coincidence because I was just reading it to prepare for the
Ah.
interview. She said, my next thing is to actually come to terms with the fact that I'm aging and people stop seeing
Wow.
value in me. I'm,
Oh
of
my
course,
God.
paraphrasing that.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So, what do you think? How much is our body grief or our entitlement conditioned by our environment?
Completely. Almost completely. Um, First of all, aging is something that is so deeply tied to body grief. I mean, I could talk about it for days, and it's so deeply tied to ableism. That is why within the first couple chapters, me and my editor, we edited those first two chapters so heavily because they're so important within a book, right? Those first two chapters, they have to really grab you, but we have to lay the framework for body grief. And that's why in the first two chapters we talk about perceived body betrayal, the framework surrounding body grief, but also the internalized isms and the systems of oppression. Because I realized going into the book, I was like, we're going to talk about body grief. We're going to talk about these things. And it took 3.5 years to write this book because of all the interviews I had to do. And I realized after doing all the interviews and doing all the research, I wasn't just writing a book about people's stories and my story and all of that. I was really writing a book about systems of oppression.
Mm.
I was writing a book about society as a whole. And it's ironic because my bachelor's degree of undergrad in college at university was anthropology, which was my family always laughed at me, being like, "That's so random." Um, but it actually came right around because it really was like an anthropological study, a sociological study of the culture in which we live in and how we behave and how we internalize and systemically the culture in which we live in, and how if we took away all of these barriers culturally, systemically, environmentally, diet culture, racism, sexism, ableism, we would be able to live in a world without body grief, except for pain.
Mm.
And that's where I hit a hard spot because I wrote a little bit about the myth of a pain-free world. And, you know, we could get into that a little bit, but I do think that because we are told that, our value lies in our beauty and our ability and our bodies, we are stuck within this grieving cycle of our
Mm.
bodies because we're really just souls floating in these like skin sacks. um and so yeah, the answer is I do think it stops us from continuing to like heal and grow, but when it comes down to it, we've got to figure out how to do it, right?
Mm.
And so this whole book is about that, how to cope, how to figure it all out. And it's harm reduction. It's like, okay, well, if you can't afford therapy, then let's do community care. If you can't do this, then let's try that. And answering this is a long answer to your question, but when it comes down to it, it's like we could reach into those, jars of cream for anti-aging, or we can go get Botox, and that's all fine. But I love that Gwyneth said that when it's like just healing the fact and grieving that, like, okay, I'm an aging woman, and that's beautiful.
Mm. So, we had a few conversations, maybe because I was in LA, about the beauty expectations on, frankly, both women and men. Of course, women have been under this oppression longer, but men are starting to catching up with us. I do not know why they decided to do that to themselves. But but while I was reading a book, Jane, for you, I will explain. I have been in personal growth industry for a really long time, 20 something years,
Yeah.
and a lot of the things that you were saying were actually maybe a little bit counter to the mainstream ideas, which I actually found very maybe sobering and refreshing and waking
Okay.
up.
Yeah.
For example, the idea that, in personal growth, we like to change the reality,
Mm.
to fight it. And in one of your chapters, you're talking about how fighting is actually preventing you from healing and from moving on. Could you elaborate on this idea?
One of the phases in body grief is fighting, is fight. And, it kind of comes back to how when we are in our central nervous system kicks in, we go to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And, with research and all of the work that I did within body grief, fight was something that kept coming back and something that people go back to within their grieving cycle. And just for a little overview, I didn't necessarily create these phases. I observed these phases in my research and named them. So we all have fallen into these phases, whether we realized it or not. Like, so you're going to read this book and everyone's going to read this book and say, like, oh, I have been here before. Not, they're not going to say, oh, I'm going to be here now that I've read this
Mm.
necessarily. Um, but fight is when we know we are in body grief. We know that our body is definitely changing and needs to rest and needs to heal, whatever that may look like, whether it's mental health, physical health. And we're just like, nah, I'm done. I'm tapped out. I don't want to do this work anymore. I'm tired. And we just push through. We don't listen to our bodies. And you're right, within the wellness community or with the self help community, usually it's like, keep going, keep pushing. Like, we've got this. You can change your reality. And in my training and in my reality, that is incredibly counterintuitive, because pushing the mind and body past that will only land you flat on your, you know what. Um, when your body gives you a whisper, listen to it. Because if you don't listen to it, you will you will literally, it will shove you down to the pavement without a choice. And that's what happened to me. And that's what
Mhm.
happened to that's what has happened to literally everybody I've spoken to, is the body is wise, and body trust, which is the last phase, um, is a two-way street. So if we want to trust our body and to get to a place of body trust, our body has to trust us. And it's not going to trust us if we're fighting past it.
Mhm.
And that is something I don't think we understand when, let's say, we're trying, we're hungry, and let's say maybe we're on a diet, which I have lots of feelings about, but let's say we're on a diet and we're like, oh, I know I'm in body grief right now, but I'm just not going to listen to my hunger cues. And instead, I'm just going to drink water.
Mhm.
That would be an example of fight.
Mhm.
Um, the body's not going to be happy about that. So it's going to slow down your metabolism. That's just an example.
Mhm. So you did mention your own experience, and I think it is only fair to actually ask you for. I know you share it in the book, so I'm sure it will be okay to
Yes,
share
of
it here.
course.
And for people who haven't read the book yet, Jane has been through literally so many things that
Yeah.
it is scary.
Yes. It's been a lot.
And I'm actually surprised because when I was getting ready for this interview, I was wondering, you are such a like such a with a positive, warm energy person. Like
Oh
not not what you would expect after all this experience. So could you share your journey?
my gosh. Well, thank you. Yes, it has been a lot. And I think when I speak on it, it's like people are like, oh my God, like she's like, wow. And it's like, because I'm very disconnected to it when I speak on it. Right.
Hmm.
Um, and I have to be, that's how I survive. Sometimes like you'll see me and I'll like get connected to it and it's like, oh wow, she's feeling it. But so I 7 years ago was in a bar class, like a Pilates bar class. And at that point in my life, I was, non-disabled. I was very active and quote unquote healthy. I had recovered from my eating disorder, and I was receiving my master's in clinical mental health counseling. I was working multiple jobs, and I was kind of like living what I thought was like the best life in your 20s, really kind of scrappy. Scrappy American 27-year-olds. Like, I was just doing it all. And then I was in this class and I lost my sight. And I also, like, half of my body just like went numb and heavy, and it felt like I was almost paralyzed. And from there on out, things just went poorly. And it turned out I had a rare neurological disorder called intracranial hypertension. It's when the cerebral spinal fluid, which coats your brain and your spinal cord, the pressure goes up and like very high, and your brain can be impacted and your optic nerves can be impacted. It's very dangerous depending on how high it gets. Mine reached an incredibly high rate. And so spinal taps and lumbar punctures, and later I received my first brain surgery out of 19 and spine brain surgeries in the past 6
Wow.
years. I also had a total hysterectomy. I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is something I was born with. It's a connective tissue disorder that has affected my entire body. Um, and now I am in a wheelchair. I can use my legs. I use different mobility aids. I have a service dog that helps me. My husband and I have been through just like an entire change in lifestyle. And, I advocate for disabled humans, and it has been a rapid identity shift, but it's also like the best thing that has ever happened to me. I mean, the pain that I live with is beyond anything I would ever wish on anybody, but also the community in which I'm in and the things I have learned. So it's been a wild, wild ride. Let me just tell
Mm.
you that.
So, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask a few
Please.
probing questions into that. So, you just named a whole series of
Illnesses.
diagnoses that came probably not at the same time, but
No.
one after another. So, this transition from being, this sassy young American doing everything you like in life to now being a disabled
Yeah.
young woman. Um, was it one process of body grief, or did you have to do it over and over again with each new blow?
Over and over and over and over again. And this is the thing about body grief is it's not like you start over every time. Um the 7 phases are there because it's nonlinear, it's multi-cyclical, and it compounds, which I think is what's great about grief is if when you do the work, it compounds on top of each other with this body grief. It can feel new every time, but then when you're in it, you can remember that there's hindsight in there, right? Your body remembers the grief, and you remember, okay, I've done this before. I've done this before. I can do this again. I can tap into my skills. You have that toolkit once you've done it before. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know that like, all right, last time I did this, and then when I was better, I read this book or I did this work, and I can tap into those tools now that I'm in a crisis. I've built this safeguard. And that is what that is. I'm not going to start learning when I'm in a crisis. That is a terrible thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever opens a book when they're in a crisis, that's a very hard thing to do, I think. But when you're starting to heal or maybe open up to the idea of I can start to do this work, then yeah, I think it's with every different thing, you're always in your body grief healing journey. I mean, just last night I was sobbing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's part of it. I mean, people, I talk about this on my social media all the time. I don't love the term expert. It's not
Mm-hmm.
something I love. My publisher is like, you're an expert in body grief. And it's like, okay, yeah, but also like I don't love that term. I'll take it. Like, sure, I'm an expert in body grief. I get it. Like I wrote the book, but also it's like I'm an expert in my body. I want everyone to be an experts in their bodies. I'll be an expert in body grief as long as we can all know that like this is a constant journey and we are always going to be healing and we are always going to be grieving. And if that means like we can do this together, and that no matter what healing process I am in, I will be going back to this book constantly. No matter how many degrees I get, no matter how many books I write, I will be in this.
Mm-hmm. Well, even if you don't like being called an expert, what I have to give you credit for is for bringing up this term body grief, because we humans have this interesting tendency to not understand the phenomenon unless we have a word for that. And I think it's a really, really helpful concept. Another personal question I want to ask is
Please.
about your husband. I didn't quite
Yeah.
understand if you were together with Sean. His name is Sean, right?
Yes, Sean.
Before you got your first diagnosis. I know during the wedding you were already using walking aid.
Yeah.
Uh, but did he experience grief for your body in this
Oh,
process?
yes. So Sean and I met when we were younger. I was a junior in college. He's 3 years older than me, and it's a nauseating story, and then it's quite cute. Um, I was studying abroad, in Florence, Italy, Firenze, and he was a tour guide, and now he's from New Hampshire, in the US. So it's not like that cute. He's not like Italian. But he was a tour guide. He was living in Rome and Florence. And at the time I was in a committed relationship, but he had a crush, and I thought he was cute, and then we like kept in touch, and once I was a senior, I was out of the relationship, and then he lived in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I don't know if you're familiar. Have you ever been out there? It's just like mountains and
I have a
yellow,
feeling that I
like,
have been there a long time ago.
okay, like Yellowstone area,
Yes. Yeah,
very
yeah.
tons. And so it's been history ever since. And then I went and lived in Jackson Hole, Wyoming for quote unquote a summer, which turned into 4 years. Um, and that was like, it's interesting because I've been reflecting on that time a lot because I
Mhm,
was kind of, I was like a city girl. I was like, so I went out to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and I was a little bit like, ugh, I don't like it here. And then I was really forced to be, hiking and um like this outdoorsy girl, and forced to like embrace that. And I was very active and using my body all the time, and that's where
mm,
I like really was healed my eating disorder. And
mm,
part of me is like, I wonder if the universe or Sean or whatever you want to call it was like, this is where you will really be using your body for the last time. Like,
mm,
I know I'm going to use my body in many other ways. I don't want people to think like,
mhm,
oh, she's saying she's done with her body, but like really using my body like I would with my non-disabled body.
mhm,
Because then when Sean and I moved to Charleston, everything changed, and we are just now getting to a place where we're like, where he's able to be like, oh wow, things are never going to be the same.
mm,
Because I think caregivers and partners grieve slower,
mm,
because when we're in the thick of it, they put their head down and they just think we have to get through it. We have to get through it. We have to get through it. And then once we're done with the crisis,
mm,
they put their head up and they're like, but what now? She's not better. And in their eyes, the better means like she's not back.
mm,
And for me, I was better in that, like, I was not dead, like all these
mm.
surgeries saved my life. But for him, he was like, well, she's not back to the Jayne, you know,
Wow.
I knew. And, I don't drive anymore. And we kind of lived this double life now where he would go out and be with his friends and go to these inaccessible places. And it's tough. It's a very, very tough dynamic to be in an interabled relationship
Mm,
when your relationship for the first half was completely different.
mhm.
It's a huge grief.
So, wow, that's such an interesting like perspective to look at it from the eyes of the partner. One question which I'm a little ashamed to ask, but it comes a lot in conversations about disability. There is this message that people have difficulties communicating with people who have a disability because it's maybe uncomfortable, maybe scary. Like,
Mm,
why am I feeling a little ashamed to ask this question right now? But I will ask it, and I'll take the shame of all the able people.
yes.
So, what is one thing you would want? people to understand when they communicate or come across a disabled person? And I know that not all disabled people are
Right.
visibly disabled, but at least when it's visible.
Yes. Yes. First of all, thank you for asking this question on behalf of everybody, because like this is something that we need to talk about. Um and of course I don't speak on behalf of all disabled people. We are not a monolith, and we are like such a large minority. I think we are the largest minority, at least in the US. I think in the world we are as well. I'm not sure actually in the world, but we are a large minority, and we are vast and super intersectional.
Mm,
Which is hard because we are so intersectional, right? We have many needs, many, 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 many needs. Um, One thing I wish non-disabled, able-bodied people, and what was the question completely? Eh,
what would you wish able-bodied people to understand when they come
Oh,
across a disability?
understand.
Yeah.
We're not that different. We're not nothing has changed, nothing is different. Treat us normally. Treat us completely the same. Um yeah, we're not different. I think one thing that has been very interesting is I had so much privilege, so much privilege. I still do. I carry so much privilege in this world. Being, educated, white, cis, women, blondes, like just so many privileges, right? And, I have like, many would say pretty privilege in a lot of ways. And I was sexualized my whole life, especially starting at such a young age. Like I went through puberty at 9, and I was almost like hypersexualized at a young age. And what's interesting is the second I got in my wheelchair, I'm invisible.
Mm,
Invisible. But then there's this hyperbole where it's like I'm also like hyper visible,
mm,
because like I come with a circus. It's like
mm,
I'm in a wheelchair with my service dog, and it's like there's no way I can not take up space, right?
mm.
But it's this thing where it's like wheelchair coming through, wheelchair coming through. Like people are like, and it's like, no, I'm a woman. Like people are like, instead of like, oh, make room for this woman, it's like, make room for the wheelchair. And
Mm,
it's like, what? Like, when would you? I'm not a wheelchair. Like, and so humanizing
mm,
disabled people, we immediately dehumanize disabled people. It's
mm,
shocking. Like, I don't care what disability you have, we immediately push them aside. And I think it is rampant in this world. We're scared, and we immediately like infantilize disabled people.
mm.
The way we like sit down and talk to them, or people will always come up to me and be like, oh, you're so young, or like, you're so pretty, and I'm like, what? Like, what does that even mean?
Mm.
Like, sometimes people will say like, but you look great, and I'm like, yeah, I'm disabled, not ugly. Like, like, just, we're normal, we're just like you.
Mm. Thank you for this. I have to make my time check. We don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to ask, before I'll start closing up the session, to walk us through the 7 steps. I know I just brushed over it, but my logic is that you guys, if you're interested in this process, get the book and read it and do the exercises.
Yes,
And we have a
please,
chance
please,
to
please.
talk to the author, so why not peek deeper into, who wrote that book? But I do, just to be fair to people who are joining into this conversation, could you walk us through these 7 steps, but not going maybe too deep into them?
Okay. Yes. So the 7 phases of body grief, I'll just go over them and then go into them a little bit, are dismissal, shock, apology, fault, fight, hopelessness slash hope, and body trust. And so dismissal is this, you know, I think something that people really, really resonate with right off the bat. And again, these phases are something that like you might not be within in a linear fashion, and that's totally okay. you might kind of come and go and dip your toe into. But dismissal is something where it's like, I am not okay. And people externally or internally you internally dismiss yourself, or externally people dismiss you and say like, I think you're fine, babe, you're good. Or you say I'm not okay, and then you say like, okay, you know what, you're right. I am fine. And you're able to name your body grief, but then it's dismissed right away. And so
Mm,
you start to internalize things and hide things. Shock is when you finally realize, oh shit, this is actually happening.
mm,
Like, this is actually happening, and you're like catapulted into reality, and it is a real reality check. And that can be, I think, one of the hardest things, because it's not like this steady phase. It's kind of one of the most like jolting um things within the body grief process.
mm,
Apology is something that many femme or female or femme presenting people usually present with is
mhm,
or identify with is, it's kind of sorry for being me, sorry for taking up space. It's very much where we recoil and are like, never mind, I'm just so sorry for taking up space, like thank you, thank you, thank you.
mm,
Like uh, I just apologize for my grief. Never mind. Or maybe you find another way to grieve because you just can't believe you took up so much space.
mm,
Fault is playing the blame game. And this is something that maybe people with chronic illness might be able to identify with right off the bat, where we flare chase. If something, um, maybe you're in a flare because of your chronic illness, you're in a lot of pain that day, and all of a sudden you're like, what did I eat yesterday?
mm.
Oh, maybe I did too much yesterday. Or, oh my God, I'm going to go on Google and I'm going to Google all of my symptoms because I think, that will make me feel better. And it's like, wait a minute. I, I think I just need to be in my body right now.
Mm,
Fight is what we talked about earlier, being at war with what is. And so you know what's happening, but you're just pushing through anyways. And that's incredibly unhelpful. Hopelessness slash hope is a big one for me. It's a big
mm,
chapter. It's so important to read. It's heavy, but it's important because there's so much gratitude and joy in it too. It's when you're at the depths of despair, but it's the yin and yang. There's light and darkness. And so it can't exist with one can't exist without the other. And so we're deeply in despair with hopelessness, but also once you get to the bottom, there's hope at the top.
mm.
um, and then body trust, when you can really believe in yourself. And here's the thing, you don't just arrive at body trust, it's not a destination. You tap in and then you go right back into another phase again. And so there's hindsight with body trust. You build the trust and then you go back into another phase.
So I wanted to actually, I wrote out this quote from I think the Hope, because I really also resonated with it, and it was so beautiful.
Good.
Grief must exist alongside gratitude, or you will end up in a dark place. But since we came already to body trust rather than this place, could you explain what is body trust? And for people who haven't read the book, I have to tell you, this book doesn't promise you to get back to what you were, young, beautiful, able, and all that stuff. So in a way, it is a little bit, it invites you to take the journey as it is. But I want you to describe what is body trust, because I understand that this is the ultimate destination.
It is. It is. Well, it's not the destination. I, I definitely, I wouldn't say it's a destination. I would say it's a place that we pass by, you
Mm,
know, because I don't think I've ever been, I think someone asked me, how many times have you been in body trust? And I would say like 10.
mm,
Um, And if anybody has said they have been in body trust like their whole life, or, I wouldn't believe them. I don't think that's real.
mm,
I really don't. I, so I would think body trust, it's an intuitive, it's intuitive, but because of all the societal disruptors we have in our lives and because of all those isms, it's been taken away from us. It's been stripped. And because of the way in which we can't allow ourselves to grieve anymore, it's been stripped. So it means being okay with not being okay. It
Mm,
means, allowing that two-way street to come to fruition. It means listening to those cues. It means not fighting. It means not leaning into the fault. It means allowing all of those previous six phases to happen and leaning into more adaptive ways of coping. So that's what's so interesting about trust is you need all the other six phases to happen in order to get to trust.
mm.
Does that make
That's
sense?
yeah, that's such a beautiful, beautiful answer. And Masha is showing me that there is, I believe, a comment or a question coming, but because I can't see it from this distance,
Oh, yes.
Jane, if you can read it,
Yeah.
yeah, I invite you to do
Says,
that.
how do you deal with losing something that you believed as part of your identity? Example, playing with sports and realizing that was the last time you were able to do that. So, beautiful question. So this is beautiful example of body grief. Like that is just body grief in a statement. So here's the thing is when we put value into our bodies, which is literally what we do every day with sports, with work, with art, with dance, and that is something that we put into our identity. This is body grief, and this is how we work through healing it. I highly recommend you reading the book. um One of the, and this is the thing, is like it's not just like I talk through reading, talk through the phases. It has like so many ways and to work through it, okay? um because there's not just like one piece of advice I could give you that will help you with this. There are so many activities and work prompts and journal prompts. One of the ways in which can I can give you a little nugget is called the shift down perspective,
Hmm.
which is when we shift down our perspective with how we use our bodies. And so, like, let's say we have an injury within sports, or we can no longer do something. We have to replace that with something else. And let's say it's just a tiny shift or it's a huge shift. We have to replace it with something else. And so it could be a huge shift because of a huge injury, and it could be from tennis to knitting. And you might be like, hell no, like that is not the same thing. And when it comes down to it, your body will be like, hell yes, that is all I can do. And so we have to figure out where the gap is and how we can fill that in. Um, and change the dopamine levels and all of that kind of stuff. And we cover that completely in this book. I'm not saying that knitting is the same thing as sports. And we talk about all of that here. Again, not saying that you should knit, and that is not the same thing, but we do talk about this a lot in the book.
Well, knitting might not be the same as sports, but it's still life, and it's better than
Ooh.
despair. Uh,
Exactly. Yes. But again, like it's kind of like when therapists will be like, just color. And
yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah, of course.
but we really kind of detail it down and
That's
um
why the book, because it's a process. It's not
it
one
is.
answer to fix. I actually like that you say that there is no fixing here. I do have the last question for Jane. And meanwhile, traditionally, no matter what platform we are on, I want to ask people who are watching us live or online or later in recording to leave a heart for my guest under the video or in the chat. In the good old Zoom, we could see all the hearts, but now, whatever. I trust that you're leaving the hearts. And the question to Jane is, how would you like your book to change the world?
Oh my gosh. I love that question. I would love for people to know that healing is possible. That they can heal within their own grief and not feel so lonely and isolated. I always say community is the antidote to body grief. And so the more people pick up this book, the more they know that they are not alone. They're not alone, and that there is hope within each pocket of the world. And yeah, I just hope they know that they have community.
Thank you so much. And if you need that community, then I warmly recommend you to actually follow Jayne Mattingly. If you can find Jayne in Instagram, she's right there. And I know your community is very supportive and active. So that's one way to find community. If you haven't signed up to Mindvalley Book Club newsletter, then please do so, because every week we give a review of the best books that were released the week before. So we give a roundup of the best books you should notice. And by the way, there are thousands of books being published in self-help and business every single week, and we bring up the best. And then of those, we pick one for the book of the week, which is why we are discussing This is Body Grief today, because this is one of the books which was picked out of many, many thousands. So yes, join us. Join us in the newsletter. It's completely free. We don't offer anything except for during interviews. I do recommend you guys buy the books. And I've actually met some of our community in LA, and I was so happy to hear that people picked up our recommendations, loved the books. So, reading is wonderful for you, and this is where you get a lot of good new reading inspiration. And also, if you sign up to us, to the new newsletter for Mindvalley Book Club, you'll get to attend this kind of events with the authors of the best books. And I want to remind you that I have access to the world's best authors. Thank you, Jayne, for joining us and for sharing your warmth and your healing wisdom. Yeah, encourage everyone to get the book, go through it, and join me for my next interview in a week.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.